Hello, everyone, and welcome back to West 42nd. I'm joined today by my co-host Delta. How you doing, my good sir?
Doing good, doing good. Happy to be here. How are you feeling?
Awesome. I'm doing great. This is our second episode of this podcast, which is awesome. Thank you all very much who tuned into the first episode. We had a lot of fun doing it, and it was fun to read everybody's reactions. There's a few quick things that we wanted to hit off at the start here, just to let people know. You might have noticed that we had a name change from the first episode and from the inception of this podcast, and that was because it was brought to our attention that the Rogue Network was a very popular term amongst the community that people had already used for some other stuff. And so in us wanting to be respectful to those parties and those things, we went for the name change. And so we are now known as the West 42nd Podcast, which is a bit of a Division reference that some people might pick up on. But so find us here and everywhere as West 42nd, including Spotify.
Let's go. Whoop.
Yep. So if you'd rather listen to us there, be sure to check us out at West 42nd. Go subscribe, listen, rate, whatever you can do on there. I don't really know. But yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Honestly, I think the West 42nd, it's a little bit more subtle, you know?
A bit.
I'm a fan, definitely. So I think we had a couple topics we wanted to hit today. Namely, we already got to the name change, but we wanted to talk about the Division Resurgence. And I know you have some thoughts that you're dying to share. So
yeah, so I mean, when we recorded the first episode, they kind of like just announced the thing. And
right.
There weren't a ton of details out, so everyone was still kind of figuring out what was what. But now, since then, they've kind of dropped like the big gameplay videos, like I think 20 plus minutes of gameplay is out there. There's a bunch of different stuff. And I've found personally a lot of cool details in that and from some other stuff that I thought would be fun for us to go over.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think that they have been very transparent with everything regarding the Division Resurgence. Obviously, there was the whole
Except for monetization.
Yes, well, that's obviously to be expected. What are we really expecting from a free-to-play mobile game, you know?
Well, I'm a little worried about that since there's PvP in the game, but I guess we'll see.
Right. So you're worried about pay to win or microtransactions and impacting the PvP experience?
I just think there's a fine line that they could pretty easily overstep if
Agreed.
They're not careful,
Agreed. So you mentioned a line. Where do you think this line is?
Well, if there's any sort of way to pay to progress your gear or your agent faster that somehow gives you an advantage in PvP, that's a no-no for me.
Right.
But maybe they have plans to make the Dark Zone completely normalized in some way. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of too early to say, but that's just a concern of mine right now.
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of been a staple of Division releases so far, especially with the early access periods with Xbox and PC. Do you think that's going to play into the release of the PvP experience in any capacity?
Exclusivity?
Yeah, that, but also, they've shown that they're willing to compromise the PvP experience for the sake of monetization.
I get what you mean.
And exclusive deals.
The focus.
Exactly.
Well, I don't think it'll be the focus, but I'm happy it's there. I'm also interested to see how it's going to work because it's, mobile.
Yeah, that's true.
If you had asked if I'd thought it was going to be there from the start, I would have said no. So,
True, that was big.
Go PvP. I'm a PvP fan. I saw a lot of people were upset that it is there because they want PvP to be gone from Division. So I guess, screw you guys. No.
That debate has always been a concern of Massive and Bungie too. There's a whole camp of people who say ban PvP from the game, it shouldn't be here. There's a camp of people who say ban PvE, it shouldn't be here. So there's no satisfying everyone in this case.
It's silly that I see people say all the time Division and or Destiny isn't a PvP game.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what does that mean? If
exactly.
It has PvP in it.
Mm-hmm.
How is it not a PvP game? Doesn't mean it's only a PvP game, but
right.
Clearly it's in the game, so I don't know.
It's a core aspect of the game. people like different things. You can't yuck anyone's yum. And if your yum is if your yum is PvP, the other person on the side of the screen doesn't have the right to tell you that it shouldn't be in the game just because it makes it slightly harder to balance the other thing, you know?
I'm with you.
That's just my 2 cents on that issue. I really don't think that people don't have the platform to say, oh, it should be here, it shouldn't be here, especially when they're not making the game. It's not their software, you know what I'm saying?
I agree. And so that was one of the confirmation of PvP. I know that was one of the interesting things, but we also have what I think are some very interesting details from mainly like the big gameplay segments they released, but some other stuff as well. The one thing first that I thought was really interesting was that we got the confirmation that this game has been in development since 2018,
right?
Since before Division 2 came out, and that it's being made by the main Ubisoft mobile studio in France, which is where like Ubisoft's headquarters. So this is being treated as like a very major game in the mobile space.
Well, I think we could infer that based on, we mentioned, I believe in our earlier podcast, that this seems to be treated as if they're using cutting edge architecture or online infrastructure to create this game.
Right.
So you have to imagine that they're taking a lot of care and they're trying to really put out the best product that they possibly can.
And it's also bringing a little bit of controversy because allegedly this game is going to feature some stuff that people have requested for a long time for the Division 1 and 2 and has never showed up in those games. Namely, there is, I wouldn't really call it a rumor because they put in this wording that apparently the Division Resurgence is going to feature a shared open world.
What do you mean by shared? What do you mean by that?
Like in a traditional MMO, you can see other people running around in the world.
So not just in the common spaces like the base of operations or random safe houses?
Exactly.
So it's going to be like...
It wasn't something that was in the gameplay, but there was like a word. I read it somewhere in one of the interviews they did or something.
Oh, really?
Where they said it's going to be a shared open world. And that's something that people have wanted in, Div 1 and 2 for a long time, and it's never been in that. So if this game starts to have features that surpass the original games, I think some people might get a little mad about that.
I could definitely see that. Like, why wouldn't they want to implement that into their existing mainline titles, Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, it goes back to the question of how much resources are being put into each, but it doesn't stop there. Also, there's a little snippet of footage in one of the gameplay things that shows off a bit of the specializations within Resurgence, and I don't know if this is a sneak peek at what we might be able to expect for Division 2's specialization revamps, but these things look kind of crazy. Not only does it show some of the skill trees for the specializations, which are more in-depth and impactful than the ones in Div 2. I mean, there's like certain talents that give you crazy buffs and you have to choose different things, but also, if anyone has ever played World of Warcraft, they are kind of following a system a little bit similarly to that, where not only do you pick a specialization, which is essentially a class, but in World of Warcraft, once you pick your class, you also have, well, this is kind of backwards. Let's put it like this. In WoW, you pick your class, let's say you're a druid, and then you have different specializations or specs that further refine what you focus on. So, for example, in there, they have Guardian for tanking, Restoration for healing, they have ranged and melee DPS. Well, in Resurgence, they have the base specializations, which are your classes, and then I don't know what they're calling them, but there's like different trees you can focus on. There's like subclasses within the specializations. I think that's pretty crazy.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds a little bit more of like a mixed mosh between Destiny subclasses and just a more streamlined experience of what we have in the Division 2. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's a good comparison. I mean, it's basically, it would be like if you were to choose Survivalist in Div 2, and then you had the option of like two different trees that you could take perks from. One that focuses on I don't know, damage, and one that focuses on healing. I don't know if that's the way they're going to implement it, but you can see in this little gameplay snippet that someone is like, I don't know, the Vanguard spec, and then they have two different named like subclasses. So pretty much what you see in Destiny, yeah.
So do you think that's going to help promote build diversity and player choice?
Absolutely. And one of the other things I wanted to talk about that I have pulled up here for reference is the gear in the game. You know, there was a lot of question about like, well, how in depth is it really going to be compared to the main games where builds are such an important part? Well, they actually finally showed us a look at a high-end piece of gear, which, you know, for anyone who plays Division is like pretty much the highest rarity and you get the most stuff on it. And on this piece of gear, for example, this is a high-end knee pad. Not only do you have gear score, health, and armor, you have different amounts of like core attributes. So there's, in this one has 2, looks like damage or red, 44 blue, like health, toughness, whatever, and 3 skill power. Then it has 2 stats, ammo pickup and stats effect duration. It has a talent, and then it has a set bonus, which I think is somewhere between like a brand and a gear set.
Right.
So these things are getting kind of crazy. This is like, you know, full-fledged Division.
This is like full-fledged MMO RPG.
Yeah.
So do you think
somewhat even more so than Div 1 or 2?
Right. And that's what I think is the crazy part. And honestly, I haven't seen a lot of discussion about this online. Maybe I just haven't been paying attention or looking in the right spots, but it seems like they're going farther than what they have done in the Division 2 and the Division 1. How much of that do you think is just a result of the feedback that they've gotten from the Division community thus far? And, you know, it's just what they know from having been doing the Division for almost 7 years. That kind of seems like logical next steps in terms of build diversity, player choice, and, you know, lots of quality of life stuff.
Well, I agree, and I think almost part of it is that in a way, this is kind of like the Division 3.
Right.
Even though no one's going to view it that way, but if this started development in 2018, that means that in their first year of development, they already had all the feedback come in from Division 2's launch.
Right.
And so they've been working now for 3 years since Division 2 has been out, using all of the feedback from 1 and 2, making this new game, making all that stuff. And so, you know, if this is received well, then I think down the road, in a few years, we could get a Division 3 that's maybe not that dissimilar from this game. You know, I'd assume there'd be a different city and timeline and all that, but could use a lot of the core RPG stuff that they're expanding upon and evolving for this mobile experience.
Honestly, this seems genre defining. I'm sorry, I didn't have.
Weird.
That's just wild. I honestly, I've been out of the loop a little bit, but I didn't know that they revealed all of this stuff. That's honestly shocking.
I did some searching,
right,
to find it. And the last little thing that I had on here to mention was that they're going even further on the kind of mixing of Division 1 and 2 for this thing, in that they're bringing in some like Division 2 exotics. In the gameplay, you can see a guy using the Lady Death.
Ooh.
So it's just kind of weird to see how much they're really putting into this mobile game that I think everybody discounted when it was first announced last year.
Absolutely. I believe, and even right before the announcement, people were describing it as a cash grab. They're saying it's just kind of predatory in terms of it's just a monetization. I don't know what the word is. Monetization engine, I would say. I don't know. But
a money-making machine.
Exactly, money-making machine. But it seems like
isn't terribly unfounded, because that's been the precedent from other mobile games.
So do you think they have an opportunity to sort of quote-unquote buck the trend, you know?
If they do it right, I think this thing could be huge. And I think, you know, when they first announced it last year, I was like, this has the opportunity to expand the Division's audience and popularity, and especially if they deliver this experience without a bunch of predatory monetization, it could be bigger than maybe anything the Division 1 or 2 has ever done for the name of the IP.
In terms of the name of the IP, it just seems like the audience is built on console gaming. The Division IP, the whole identity is, you know, a console, Xbox, PS4, PC game. Like how I guess my question is, how do you think that they're going to try and pitch the Division Mobile to the existing Division franchise? I mean, I know everyone, like most people have a mobile phone, but that's not really
have phones.
Is that a reference?
Yeah, that's what Blizzard said when people were mad about Diablo Immortal.
Oh, okay. Well,
They were like, yeah.
that was kind of a okay.
But no, it's definitely, I mean, that's definitely like the biggest stretch at this point is that everybody's like, well, this seems almost better in a way than Division 2, and you're now forcing us to play it on our phones.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if this thing ends up being super popular, that in a few years they might make, if Division 3 still isn't in development yet, they might make a PC port. I don't know.
Man, I hope so. I honestly think that's probably doable, especially just because when I was in Atlanta, I was able to play Destiny 2 on my iPad. Really? Yeah, well, via Stadia. But
yeah,
it should be doable. And guys, if you have like an Apple device or something like that, you could just screencast it to a TV. So, yeah. I mean,
there's
it's
ways to get around it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the big things that I've noticed is people, and I think we talked about this a little bit, is the people within the Division community have been doing a lot and just kind of showing off how they plan on working around the mobile game constraints, which I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, that was, a lot of the stuff we wanted to talk about with Resurgence. I will say, though, for anybody who's been out of the loop or just didn't hear yet, the alpha testing is starting on it pretty imminently from when we're recording this. Right now it's in Europe only, which is kind of annoying for us, North American folk.
Yeah, us American people.
But you can definitely go to their website and sign up. I think they plan on sending more invites and adding more countries later. So sooner than later, we're going to get our hands on it. And yeah, I'm very interested in seeing how this game will progress.
I hope so. I hope we get it soon, just because I just want more Division. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, let's not hope too soon, because we got TU16, we got Heartland, we got this. It's going to be a lot.
That's true. Have we heard any rumblings about the Division Heartland or release dates, Gamescom, anything like that?
Well, not too much that I've heard. I mean, I think Ubisoft Forward is going to have it.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize you cut out there. So
did you not hear me?
Well, I thought you said something. Did you end it? You ended it with Ubisoft Forward.
I said Ubisoft Forward will have it.
Oh, that's completely on me. I think I'm just tired.
Fix it in post.
Fix it in post.
I would say, well, I don't know how long we've been going, but maybe transition that to Thor.
We've been talking for 18 minutes and 50 seconds.
Yeah, we could probably do it.
All right. So enough about Division. Let's talk about. You see any movies recently?
I heard there's some weird, like, small indies going on right now. There was that one about the fighter jets.
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of weird. I heard also, I actually did see this one. Someone made me go see it. There was one about a weird, like, space Viking with an axe.
Actually sounds pretty interesting. Like a cool concept.
Gore?
I think his name is Chris. No, Liam. Liam Hemsworth. No. Luke Hemsworth. Miley Cyrus? No.
Thor.
Love and Thunder.
Earlier this month, and we both went and saw it. So for anyone who doesn't know, in this podcast, we like to talk about Division, but also any pop culture stuff that we think is interesting, and we both thought Thor was interesting.
It was interesting at best, especially because...
At best. So we haven't talked about this. What were your thoughts?
I liked it. Even though it had some glaring issues, I still had a good time. My theater, I went to go see it on opening day. My theater was laughing out loud. Every joke hit in my theater, even the screaming goats. I personally didn't laugh at everything. There were some good jokes. There was some comedy. It got a chuckle out of me here and there, but I was a little bit upset about the sacrifice of the story for lack of a better word, just kind of like the paper thin plot,
Yeah. Well, okay, before we get too deep, did you like the goats?
No.
I did.
You did.
I shared somewhat of a similar, like, overall opinion to you. I thought the goats were pretty funny.
I think their first on-screen appearance was like, okay, goats, yeah, so funny. But when they decided to make it a running gag, I was not. I was a little bit more
at the end, where,
unresponsive
like,
towards
crash
it.
into that little moon, and then it's silence, and then they yell out. I thought that was pretty hilarious.
That was a good moment. I'm not gonna lie. That like
You hear
that part got me.
Taika Waititi, like his main inspiration for those was the Taylor Swift like mashup with the goats. Like
I did see that. Yeah, I saw that. To be honest, this is probably one of the most anticipated Marvel movies for me, and I did a lot of comic book research into gore. I watched a lot of like the pre movie release interviews that Taika Waititi, Chris Hemsworth, can't remember the other person's name.
Christian Bale.
Yeah, Christian Bale, him. But what's the lead's name? Padme.
Oh, Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman. Right. But yeah, I don't know. I just found myself slightly disappointed with the stakes of the movie. It just kind of seemed like he was more interested in telling jokes, and I get that it was going for the rom-com sort of aspect, and I liked it. But especially seeing Thor's like emotional arc kind of just like retcon to be only about Jane and not about the weight of the universe being placed on him and failing.
Yeah.
I wasn't too thrilled by that.
Yeah, I mean, similar. I absolutely loved Ragnarok, and so like knowing that this has been coming up for like 2 years, I was super excited because I was like, well, the last one was like Taika's first like try at it. And
right.
So, like now that he's having so long to be able to prepare and like refine that vision, I was like, this is going to be awesome. And I liked it, but I had a lot of similar thoughts. I mean, it's been kind of hard for me to like vocalize why it kind of disappointed me, because I didn't necessarily think I don't think it had more jokes than Ragnarok per se. I mean, Ragnarok had a lot of jokes.
Right.
Like, it had a lot of jokes, but I think it just blended. I guess it had a better story, but this one had a fine story. And I guess the problem is that they just mixed, like, you're right, because I didn't like personally Endgame Thor.
Right.
The fat Thor. It, in a way, it had a purpose. I've seen a lot of people say like it dealt with a lot of like real world issues, and that's totally true, and I don't like want to discount that, but personally I thought they played it for jokes too much, and I wasn't a fan of it. And so especially to see that like at the beginning of this film, like it was just kind of cheap to me that they in a montage got rid of that whole idea that fast. It's like, well, if you were going to, make that whole investment in Endgame just to get rid of it right away, why even do it in the first place?
Exactly. And that's part of why, especially when it's one of the only real sort of actual real world not criticisms, but it's more of like a commentary on how society views men and how I would say depression and stuff like that is kind of taken as a joke. Just for that to be kind of thrown out you're right, it felt cheap, and it felt like it was just mishandled, I would say, and a little bit disappointing too.
Ever since Ragnarok through Endgame was like he's had all this loss, and now he's trying to like deal with more actual responsibility, but then he's like more arrogant than ever in this film.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of explained because like he doesn't really know how to be around Jane, especially after, having dated her and then they broke up. But I just felt like it just all around the way that they portrayed Thor, and especially the way that they portrayed King Valkyrie. They kind of, I feel like they just kind of mishandled a little bit.
They shortchanged her.
Yeah. It was like
it was weird because it was like it was too many things at once, but also there wasn't a lot in there at the same time. So it's like they just focused on weird things. The one thing that I do think it had over Ragnarok was a better villain. I thought Gore was really great, and I thought Christian Bale did a good job.
Absolutely.
Like, you can't bring in that dark of a villain and like that much stuff if you're just going to put him in a movie where nothing is taken seriously.
Yeah,
Whereas in Ragnarok, there were still actual stakes. Like Asgard got destroyed.
Yeah. And it's set up
stuff, but it was still funny, and they blended it really well, and just none of that really worked here.
Agreed. Especially because Ragnarok set up Infinity War, which is, probably one of the best and most influential Marvel movies.
Yeah.
ever made, I would say. I just
it's Love and Thunder has fallen prey, in my opinion, to a similar issue that a lot of Phase 4 has had, where there's not just a very clear direction that we can see where they're headed right now, and I think that's really causing a lot of things to suffer. I don't think they have the same interconnectivity that they did back in 1 through 3, and so I don't know. The MCU is losing a little bit of charm to me, to be honest. I still love it, but not everything is a hit these days.
Absolutely, especially with the implementation and existence of all the Disney Plus shows, making everything a little bit more of a chore to kind of understand everything. And a lot of that criticism was leveled against Doctor Strange, I would say, which I personally loved, and I liked WandaVision a lot.
Which is funny because the reception for Love and Thunder and Doctor Strange are almost the same.
Yeah.
Some people absolutely love it, and some people absolutely hate it. I love Doctor Strange. Some people hate it. I didn't hate, but I didn't like Love and Thunder. A lot of people absolutely loved it. So it's just really weird.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, when they go to a Marvel movie, not everyone cares about the stakes, I would say. And I think it definitely catered towards people who just kind of wanted to, for lack of a better word, just go to the theater, laugh at the jokes, and not think too hard a whole lot about the plot. But as you mentioned before, gore is not the villain for that.
Mm-hmm. And also, that's not what made the MCU successful in the first place.
Absolutely.
And, it's at this point, they've introduced so many new people since Phase 4 started that we haven't checked in with once. Back in Phase 1 and 2, you see somebody, and then they'll pop up again, even for a short cameo in another movie, just so you understand their progression. Right now, it's okay, well, what happened to Shang-Chi or the Eternals? Or any of these people that we were introduced to, they're just out there chilling. So I don't know. I think Phase 4 is a little aimless right now, but yeah, Love and Thunder overall, C.
C? You're giving it a C?
You'd give it lower?
No, I actually give it a little bit higher. I think either a B or B minus for me. Another thing, and I don't want to keep bashing on the movie, but the misuse of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. It was just why even have them there? I know that what was set up at the end of Endgame, but I don't know.
For it to matter, for only have 10 minutes of screen time, especially because Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 is my favorite MCU movie.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
But they felt a little off too. Maybe it's because Gamora wasn't there, but.
That's true. But isn't there a different Gamora from the past or something that's floating around?
Yeah, and I don't really know what happened to her at the end of Endgame. Honestly, I highly doubt that the MCU is ever going to be as strong as it was leading up to Infinity War and Endgame. The only through plot that I'm really interested at this point is the stuff that happened at the end of Loki with Kang.
Oh yeah, with Kang the Conqueror, really
compelling. But again, that hasn't been touched on ever since it aired.
Yeah, not at all.
And so I know he's going to be in Ant-Man, I think.
But why Ant-Man?
Yeah, I don't know. So
yeah,
there's a few things I've really loved about Phase 4. Thor wasn't one of them.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit less harsh on the movie than you are. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sticking with B, I would say.
Solid.
Yeah.
Well, if that's about all we have to say on that, then I think that's all we have to say for this episode, unless you have anything else you want to add.
Oh, hold on there, Buster. We got sorry, we got some Q&A, right?
Oh, we do.
Yeah, we forgot about the Q&A portion. So guys, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask us in particular, or a question about the game, we're going to have a section dedicated to right here at the end of the video or the end of the podcast, wherever you're listening, so that we can read out your questions and we can answer them. And I think you have one, Roguegold.
Yes. So Simon left in the comment section of the first episode asking, do you think they will buff gear sets like they said they would starting with Striker, or are we past that now? And that's a very good question, because it was kind of promised to us that after the Striker rework, stuff like system corruption was being looked at, Negotiator's Dilemma, and other stuff in the future. I would have thought that we would have seen more of that. But the one, I guess, consideration there is that those promises were made to us by Trick Dempsey, who is no longer on the project. She moved on to be, I think, Ubisoft's head of inclusivity in gaming across like all of their games.
Wow.
And so I don't know if that goal of hers got passed on to anyone else on the team, or if that kind of died with her leaving. But I certainly wish we would continue to see more balancing stuff and reworks every update. I hope maybe TU10 and TU16 will bring some more of that, since it's a little light on the content end of things. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because we have 2 new content releases coming, but the details of those have not been fully fleshed out. So it's possible we might see some more, but yeah, definitely. Nothing confirmed on the near future or by any of the devs in particular as of this moment.
Yep.
Well, anyways, thank you for your time there. This was fun.
Thank you for your time.
Indeed. Thank you guys all for listening. We appreciate you. You can find us on YouTube and you can find us on Spotify. And thank you all for watching. Appreciate you guys. And Delta out.
Roguegold out.
Have a good one, guys. Bye.
See y'all.